If you're like me, there's something that draws you into the Japanese garden, but you can't always explain it. In the beginning, I was intrigued, but also sort of confused in a way because I was lumping different styles of gardens together. It wasn't until I began more seriously researching Japanese gardens and undergoing apprenticeship in Osaka and Fukui that I began to grasp the differences of the 4 types of Japanese garden design. I'm hoping that as we go through these 4 styles, it brings about some clarity as well as inspiration for your own garden designs. Some believe that by definition, you can only create a Japanese garden within Japan, which may be true in a technical sense, but I believe that you can create the essence of a Japanese garden in your space, wherever that is, adhering to the traditional principles that have guided Japanese landscape architects for centuries. A good starting place for designing your Japanese garden is to decide what style of garden you're interested in, and will it best fit the intended space. Traditionally, most Japanese gardens can be divided into 4 main styles, including the Japanese strolling garden, the rock garden, the courtyard garden, and the tea garden or hermitage garden. Some of these styles definitely overlap, and you can blend different elements together to create your garden, as long as you understand fundamentally how they were designed and where they were designed to be implemented. The Japanese strolling garden, or Kaiyu-Shiki, is meant to be leisurely wandered through. Some of these gardens highlight man-made hills, ponds, and waterfalls, while Zen gardens or rock gardens, Karesansui, are designed with more of a contemplative and meditative role. The courtyard garden, or Tsubo-niwa, are often in smaller and enclosed areas of a home or a temple, and with an idealized miniaturized scene that can allow your imagination to take you somewhere else. The tea garden, or hermitage garden, Roji, can be enjoyed while participating in a tea ceremony or making the journey to the tea house. If you've checked out some of my other videos before, welcome back. If you're new to the channel, my name is Joshua Minier, and this is Shizen Style, a guide to bringing nature into your modern lifestyle. If you're into this type of stuff, please give that bell a ring and stay up to date with all of the things we have going on here. As human beings, we all have the desire to bring nature into our busy lives. The Japanese garden serves as a space that allows us to appreciate the beauty of both nature and our creativity. The Japanese garden may seem like a very natural and beautiful space, but what we need to remember is that nothing in the garden happens by accident. Japanese garden designers have spent countless hours trying to create a special place that seamlessly blends together human creativity, a nature-inspired scene, and the practicality of a budget and obtainable local materials. Keeping that in mind will help you to develop the best garden for your space. So let's take a deeper look at the first style, the Japanese strolling garden, Kaiyu-Shiki. This type of garden may be what most people outside of Japan think of when they hear the word Japanese garden. Outside of Japan, many of the Japanese gardens that we get to see have stemmed from some type of friendship garden with a sister city. Most places outside of Japan are not limited in space as severely as they are in Japan. So it's very common for us to associate a garden with a park. We often do have the space, so large park-like gardens have been established in cooperation with Japanese designers, but unfortunately they often lack the maintenance needed to really show off the beauty of a Japanese garden. In a larger area, you can often include a pond that will have waterfalls and large man-made hills, winding pathways, and many Japanese garden ornaments such as lanterns. In North America, many Japanese gardens have gone overboard with sort of cluttering the garden with everything Japanese. I don't want you to feel like you need to incorporate all of the elements into your design. An austere, decluttered garden is much more effective than going overboard with exotic Japanese symbols in a garden. In Japan, many aristocratic gardens have become public gardens now. Many were developed in the time when the daimyo had aimed to create basically a large playground for the aristocrats. Some of the gardens were heavily influenced by Chinese styles from the Heian period, and others with more of an Edo era feeling, leading these to be somewhat inconsistent in their designs. Some of the gardens were heavily influenced from Chinese gardens that included deeper ponds and widening streams that were meant for small boats. The aristocrats would row out and enjoy the pond, sometimes having a flower viewing festival or writing poetry on the boat. Usually there are a few different routes to take that lead you through the garden, and at various spots along the path are places to stop or sit and take in a different view. Korakuen in Okayama and Kendokuen in Kanazawa are two of the best examples of stroll gardens in Japan. These large park-like gardens have vast lawns and ponds that are really a testament to the appreciation of the style of garden. The man-made hills, or Tsukiyama, became a very important feature of these gardens. They represent large mountain ranges and really help to create a large landscape image in a smaller area. I encourage you to play around with adding some type of man-made hill in your garden. This can be a difficult thing to do if you have a flat yard, but elevation changes are one key point to creating a natural looking landscape. Japan is about 75% mountainous, so many of the Japanese landscape designs that you see include this type of mountain and also island designs in them. If you're thinking about creating a man-made hill or waterfall, another important point to keep in mind is that they should have some type of solid backdrop. Having a good background behind a hill or a wall is important so that it doesn't seem like it's coming out of nowhere. Therefore, making use of evergreens or Japanese maples can be quite effective. The Japanese maples are often used to sort of hide where the top of the waterfall is actually coming from. A great Japanese garden usually has elements of mystery and not fully being able to see everything from one position. Another thing to think about is what type of ground cover you're going to use. Having grass on the hill may be the best option if the hill is not too steep and you're able to mow it. There are a variety of different grasses that can both grow in full sun and fairly shaded areas though. You could also try a low growing ground cover like Irish moss or ivy for a slightly different shade of green and a different look. The second style of Japanese garden is the rock garden, Karesansui. Karesansui is the term used to describe a dry rock garden, and I really love dry rock gardens. We often lump this category into what we call Zen gardens, but a rock garden is only a Zen garden if it's located at a Zen temple or built with those specific meditative or religious intentions. There are numerous examples of dry rock gardens at Shinto shrines, Shingon Buddhist temples, Pure Land Buddhist temples, museums, parks, and people's home gardens. Some of the famous Zen gardens, such as Ryoanji in Kyoto, have dominated the image of the raked sand and lumped all of this style of garden together. You can have a contemplative or meditative garden, or simply an aesthetically pleasing dry rock garden without making it religious, which is what a Zen garden technically is. The setting of stones and the placements of stones and the groupings together are given a high priority in the Japanese garden. This is where you start to see the development of an original Japanese style garden and a divergence from ancient Chinese styles. Still, you can see Taoist symbolism in the form of creating a scene from Mount Hodai and the Immortals. The level of thought and strategy that goes into creating Japanese rock gardens is unique to itself. Stemming from Japan's native religion or philosophy, Shinto, comes the belief that everything has a spirit. Therefore, rocks and boulders are seen as sacred because there is an innate power, and this is something that should be respected and appreciated. This is seen as everything having a life force or flowing energy about it. This is our connection to Mother Earth. Stone setting. Your dry garden scene will seem more natural if you lean towards groupings of odd numbers. Odd numbers and asymmetry tend to feel more natural than equal divisions and equal heights of the different stones or trees planted. In photography as well, there's a concept of the golden rule of thirds, which guides you to developing a natural asymmetric balance. The next style of Japanese garden is the courtyard garden, or Tsubo-niwa. The courtyard garden is where Japan stands out for creating landscapes for small spaces. Usually this space is just less than 11 square feet in size, but in a central location of the home. These courtyard gardens serve a real purpose of bringing nature into your daily life, but your home architecture has to allow for it. Often these gardens are best if they are placed somewhere in the middle of the house and has multiple viewing points. The courtyard garden should ideally be centrally located with windows or sliding doors that open up and allow the outside to become part of the inside. If a main hallway surrounds this courtyard garden, then you're much more likely to notice seasonal changes or the daily weather. And these are all simple little reminders that we're a part of something much bigger than us. Sometimes these courtyard gardens can be miniaturized landscape scenes that try to recreate a whole Japanese scene. I have found, however, that creating something that is more minimalistic can also serve as a sort of spiritual refresher. You can still include various Japanese ornaments with a minimalistic concept that will allow you to leave your creative mark on nature. The courtyard garden should have some element of water in it, but this can be accomplished in a variety of ways. You can have actual water or a small waterfall or possibly a koi pond, but you do have to take into consideration the maintenance issues with keeping running water in a pond in that space. You can employ different types of rock gardens that you could have smaller gravel that is raked to show waves or ripples in the water, or what is meant to symbolize water. You can also have stone water basins, which provide both interesting and creative ornament that can actually hold water. I've done this many times, and you can get the effect of having actual water in the garden with a lot less maintenance. You have to refresh the water every so often, but it's nice to place seasonal leaves or flowers floating on top, which also highlights the seasonality of the scene. The fourth type of Japanese garden, and my personal favorite, is the tea garden or hermitage garden, also known as a roji. The roji refers to the garden that you walk through to get to the tea house and literally means dewy ground in Japanese. The tea garden is said to create an air of simplicity, and therefore most of the garden design and plantings stay closer to natural design, relying on local items and materials. This type of garden came about in the time when wabi-sabi was gaining a foothold on Japanese aesthetics. Although often this is a garden leading to a tea house, sometimes the term is also used as a hermitage garden. The tea houses at the time were sometimes very pristine and elaborate, but other times they may have been more like a rundown hut in the woods, which may actually be a better showcase of the essence of wabi-sabi. Sen no Rikyu and Kobori Enshu are both major developers of this style of Japanese garden, with Rikyu leaning towards keeping it natural and Enshu leaning towards adding creative elements. The Roji garden is usually divided into an inner and an outer. That is, there's usually an entrance gate that starts you on the path in the outer garden. Then, after following a winding path, usually with a variety of stepping stones or nobedan, stone pavement, you come to a machiai seating area. You're meant to sit here and take in the view and also wait to be called into the tea house by the host. This is a general overview of the different types of Japanese gardens, but I encourage you to subscribe and check out the Japanese garden playlist that I have at Shizen Style. There you'll find some other videos where I go deeper into these types of gardens and design principles.